I remember this male leader came to me one day and said, you need to smile more. And I looked at him and I just said, first of all, would you ever say that to a male? And secondly, why? Like why? And it's just interesting because those are the little moments where I want people to pause to say, hey, where's that coming from? Like, I love feedback, but is that a stereotype? And so I think, some days it's tough to be a female leader in tech for sure. And some days you have to make sure that you're still doing what you want to do and you're principled in what you believe in.
Welcome to another episode of Confessions of Successful Asian Women. Today I have a guest with me. She is a VP of People, Operations, and Culture for a tech company in San Francisco. She has a lot of experience working in tech, both as an HR executive and in many other roles. And she has won several awards in helping companies be great places to work. Mai, I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
I'm thrilled to be here, so thank you for having me, Alia.
Mai, you have an Asian background and you are a Vietnamese American. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Yes, I'm part of what's known as that 1.5 generation that has a little bit of Eastern tendencies, but because I grew up over here in the States, I've definitely assimilated with some Western culture in me. My parents are both from Vietnam. I'm Vietnamese, and I traveled to Vietnam about 5 years ago with them, and it was sort of the first time I ever felt Vietnamese because I had grown up over here in the States for so long that I never knew I was Vietnamese until I took that trip. The funny thing is, when I went back home to Vietnam, I didn't feel Vietnamese, but some days over here when I'm in the States, I don't quite feel American.
If you do a lot of work in diversity and inclusion, and for our audience members, Mai is a fierce lady by all means, but you're a petite Asian woman, so you have to have a really big voice. And I wonder, what your thoughts are around diversity and inclusion, but maybe we could take a step back and help everyone understand what is diversity and inclusion.
I think nowadays the new term is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And with me being sort of a petite Asian female working among what's typically a very Western white culture, what I found is, for me, I can't boil the ocean. So there's female diversity, there's religious diversity, there's ethnic diversity, and all of those things are coming into the workplace, and it's a great time. For me, I have to understand how to make people feel that they can be themselves at work, because that's actually very hard. There's a lot of, I would call it, chaos in the world and a lot of hate some days that, for me, what I'm trying to do is really show people that they can be themselves and they can be accepted, they can bring their whole self to work, and that everybody would celebrate that as opposed to hate that. I think in this day and age where technology is at our fingertips, the phones and the devices keep us more tethered to work, if anything else, so that I see, especially working in the field that I do, I see a lot of blurred lines of when people take vacations, they're still checking emails or still slacking or hip chatting as a way to stay connected to work. And I think that the world of work is changing. And so part of my high effort work is around allowing for different people's lifestyles and sort of carving the path to showing that you can be whoever you want to be as you show up every day for 10 hours a day and work and hopefully do your greatest work. But, for me, as an Asian female, it's very interesting because sometimes when I do sit on executive teams, when I am more boisterous or when I want to make a particular point, I say it without any editing and I say it with conviction. And what I've seen on the receiving end of that is, whoa, you're an Asian female. That is so not what the stereotype is around, especially being petite, especially being from an Asian continent. I think some of the stereotypes around being demure or perhaps modest or not speaking up is sort of where I see the reaction of, oh my gosh, you're very different from what I think of when I think of a petite Asian female. And that's some of the progress that I'm trying to make, is that we all come in different shapes, sizes, and we're from different places, but in the end, we all have our own personalities that are really shaped by the sum of our experiences.
You also have a diversity and inclusion coach that you work with. And you mentioned something very interesting to me where you said, the soft skills like empathy and compassion are skills that robots won't have. And I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts about empathy and compassion and why you chose to go with a diversity and inclusion coach versus a leadership coach.
I have so many thoughts around this, but my first thought is I'm a working parent, so I'm a proud mother of Emma, who is my 9-year-old daughter. And so she's watching everything that I do, and I'm trying to lead by example. And I feel like in the chaotic world in which we live, one of the best things is that there's so much technology, and I want her to be able to take advantage of some of those advances that we're making as a human race. But I want her to maintain her kindness and her humanity, which sometimes can be lost in this world. And so I do feel that all this talk about AI and robots, the softer skills are actually what the robots can't. They'll never be able to duplicate, right? Humanity is very different, and being human with each other is really hard to replicate. I don't ever want to lose sight that at the end, we're still human, and there's a lot of suffering in the world that we can all really make an impact against.
Is that the best investment you've made in your career?
Oh my goodness, it's a powerful thing when you can invest in yourself. So I advise anybody to really try to figure out where their passion is and make that investment.
As you look at the progress that you've made in your career, and as you've risen in your career, you're at a very senior level right now, what about you has changed over time? Like, what are some beliefs that you've had to abandon to make room for new beliefs?
I think maybe my biggest pivot has been that humans are actually very malleable. And as I was younger, I always thought that people were born a certain way and behaved a certain way and just acted a certain way. And what I'm finding is that's not true. Just like when I was young, I used to hate beets, and today I love eating beets. And that's just an example of how human behavior changes over time. Your taste buds change, your preferences change, and so your behaviors change. And I think that is a aha moment for me now that I'm older, now that I'm a parent. I see it. I see that everybody's very agile, and they change with the changing times. And I think it's wonderful to see, but it also can cause a lot of consternation as people change together and grow apart sometimes.
Has there anything that's changed about you?
So back to the inclusion, it is like, how do we do all of this together, knowing that we're learning and growing together? And I think in the past, my ambition overshadowed sort of some of my human moments where I was colder or harsher than I needed to be. And now I try to balance it much more softly and still, work with conviction and be very principled in what I think I'm passionate about.
Do you ever struggle with work-life balance?
Oh, constantly. I don't know if that term really exists, right? I think the new term is work-life blend.
Yes.
Because I think we're all trying to balance as much as we can, and I really like the analogy of we have a lot of spinning plates, and we're going from place to place to make sure the plates are all spinning and none of them are falling down and breaking. And so I think that is a constant shift every day, especially when you have responsibilities outside of work. And, I think I'm part of the sandwich generation where I'm also having older parents and I have a young child. So I think this middle ground is tough to navigate. And there are emotional moments in life that I love. And then there are really difficult moments of making some hard decisions based on what you think is right for today.
Is there one piece of feedback that really stood out for you?
I would tell you that along the way, people are going to invest in you, and sometimes you don't understand and realize that investment. So, one of the examples that I still remember today and that I still use actually is one of my previous mentors at a consulting firm where I used to work pulled me aside one day and said, you're petite, you're small. And so when you are out in the public and speaking in front of especially bigger audiences, you're going to need to walk the floor so that they can see you and make sure that you can be heard. And at the time, it was sort of what I viewed as cruel to just sort of make fun of my size, or was that a short joke? But actually, through time, I've realized that I love sharing my learning, so I do try to go out and speak in public forums as a way to have other people grow and to invest in myself. And I do find myself walking the floors and making sure that people can see me as a way to connect with the audience. And so at the time, it was very uncomfortable to receive that advice, but now looking back, I use it in my everyday world, and so it's been part of who I am.
Did you always want to go into this field as a young girl? When you were going through school, like what were you thinking for yourself in terms of what would be your career path?
So I am a liberal arts major, and it's been a wonderful journey because when I entered college, I was going to be an engineer. So I took an engineering math class where I was the only woman, and it was a little intimidating because I thought I was strong with math. But at the end of the class, I actually received a D, and that was after the curve. And it was sort of that moment of maybe what I think I'm strong in, I'm not. So let me explore different opportunities. So that's how I ended up with a liberal arts degree. I can't say that I planned to actually go into people operations and culture. That wasn't planned either. I sort of fell into it, and it was partly investments in other people, especially CEOs, who said, you know what, come join me, be my coach, or come join and be my first employee, and we're going to build this company together. So that's sort of how I fell into this role, and I still love it and I thrive in it.
When was a time where you really had to put yourself out of your comfort zone?
I think sometimes it happens daily, especially in the tech world where things are changing and there's a pivot in strategy or a pivot in direction. And I feel that sometimes I'm the only female, sometimes I'm the only one with dark hair in the room, especially among executive teams that I've worked with, that there's uncomfort in that. And I've had to really bite my tongue or actually unleash my tongue when I'm feeling like things aren't happening the way that I think they should. But it's been a wonderful journey for me because I think I find growth in those moments too.
Do you think female leaders need to be likable or competent?
Oh, we were just talking about this, Alia, how sometimes, especially females in the workplace, and I remember this male leader came to me one day and said, you need to smile more. And I looked at him and I just said, first of all, would you ever say that to a male? And secondly, why? Like why? And it's just interesting because those are the little moments where I want people to pause to say, hey, where's that coming from? Like, I love feedback, but is that a stereotype? And so I think, some days it's tough to be a female leader in tech for sure. And some days you have to make sure that you're still doing what you want to do and you're principled in what you believe in. but tech companies in general push the boundaries. And sometimes I would say that's really great for people who thrive in places of discomfort, and it's not for everybody.
You mentioned that you would love to write a book about all your experiences working in tech.
Oh, Alia, yes, yes, yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that. I'm sure you've had some crazy stories along the way, and if there's one that really stands out.
Oh, yes, that is one of my goals, is to write a book, because you'd be surprised what happens in this day and age. And so I have 97 pages of this book, and I write as a way to give me a little therapy sometimes at the end of a rough day. Or it's a collection of stories. Like, you'll never guess what was said, but there are moments where, cancer enters somebody's life, or drugs, or just life happens. And so, being in the industry, in the field that I work in, I find out a lot about people's lives and stories. And so there have been a lot of occasions for me to write about, as a way to show human connection and to also celebrate some of life's happier chapters and commemorate some of the sadder moments that all of us will eventually go through. So yeah, it's been part therapy, but part something that I definitely want to publish through time.
Do you think you'll do it in the next couple of years?
I've got 97 pages, so I think it's eventually going to get there, Alia, with help from folks like you.
What is your definition of success?
Oh my gosh, I think success means doing what you love. And it's very simple, because that's a very different thing for everybody. I would say, don't compare yourself with other people. Be happy in the moment, and make sure that you're doing what you love.
Is there any parting advice that you'd want to share? I know that you talked a lot about your daughter, and if she were to listen to this podcast in the next 5 years, what would you want her to hear?
I'd want her to hear that she can do whatever she puts her mind to. I think it's a very different world, and it's a world where you can truly feel empowered, right? People are bypassing college, inventing things, and just going after their dreams in a way where you don't have to wait until you're 70 to fulfill your bucket list items. Like, do them throughout your life, and I would encourage her to fly.
Thank you, Mai. This has been a wonderful conversation. I look forward to your book. I'll be waiting for it.
Thank you.